Greeting. No.
Here's Russ in his study, and I'd like to talk to you, Russ, a little bit about the game of 1972 when Westmont College were the national champions. And before we do, could you just read a roster of who was, if you can remember, who was on the bus that year with you?
Well, George, I had an unusual coaching philosophy in that I never cut a player. If he stayed out through preseason and through all the other tests that I put them through, they were on the team. They were listed as part of the varsity, even though I had a varsity and the leftovers were made up our junior varsity team. So I included every young man that came out and participated and wanted to participate on the Westmont College soccer team on themselves. So we ended up, I'll kind of name the starting lineup and a few of the subs that I use quite a bit. To begin with, we were fortunate to have a very fine returning team and a few good new players to make up the 72 squad. In goalkeeping was Gary Allison, and Gary was named the most valuable player of the national tournament. He played.
Who else was on the team?
Then my fullbacks, we had Tim Quick at one fullback. We had Tom Dawson, one of my co-captains. He played center back. Then we had Ray DeVries, the other fullback. At midfield, I had Steve Kellogg, one of our co-captains. We had Sal Ornelas from our area in Santa Barbara. He was a midfielder. And then Ben Mashila, who was a Kenyan, who went to a school in Kenya where we recruited a number of missionary kids, and Ben was one of them. And he was an outstanding player himself. Then we had what we called a trailer, and Jean-Paul Verhees from Holland was playing in that particular position because I wanted him to be able to rove from one place to the other. He was our key scorer. I had a series of different patterns that our guys would run. We'd call out a number, 1, 2, and it goes up to 15. And second half, I'd change it. So we'd say, all right, we're using the second digit or third digit. So if we say 315, it was third digit, it's play number 5. And the players knew it, but the other team couldn't pick up what we were doing because we repeated some of the corner kicks that were most effective.
Kept them guessing.
Yes, we did. And they didn't quite know what to have because we ran all these different patterns. So every corner kick, we're running a different pattern. And in one pattern, for example, I have guys right near the goalkeeper, 3 of them. They run towards the man taking the corner kick. Meanwhile, there's another player coming up by the goalkeeper. He can't touch him, but he's up there by him and hinders him a bit. And then we have 3 more guys. As they vacate, they're coming in. The corner kick man knows that particular play. He hits it low, about knee high, and they jump over the ball. They screen the ball. The players can't see it. He jumps up. It goes under them. And then these 3 more guys coming in from different directions. And we scored a lot of goals on that one.
That's a complicated play.
Well, you haven't even seen some of them because we had skip hitters. We just had numerous ways. And play. If we got scouted by someone, they'd find it very difficult to play against or guard against the number of plays we had because we had 15 that we could run and run well. And every practice we worked on those. And so, as I said, unheard of, but in 49% of our corner kicks, we scored. And of course, I had some very good players too.
Well, is that about the whole lineup then that went?
Well, I gave you pretty much the full lineup. I just finished with the front line. We talked about the defenders.
Well, tell me about the last game when you finally had the championship. There were a lot of games before that, and by the way, there's an interview with you that I did last Saturday that's very detailed For anybody who wants to see it, it's on YouTube, Coach Russ Carr, and they can find you there. So tell me about the last game when you took the national championship.
Well, George, I will tell you that, but I'll give you a quickie on the semifinal game because that was a key game.
Okay.
That thrust us into the finals of the playoff. And that was against Quincy College, the defending champion. They were favored to win the national championship as they had before. And this is when the field was covered with water. It was, literally looked like a lake. The New York Times reporter, as I said, says, there's no way they can play on it. And then afterwards he said, that was one of the finest soccer games I've ever seen. And we're playing literally on standing water and against an outstanding team who often plays in wet weather as opposed to Westmont, who rarely plays in wet weather.
Santa Barbara's pretty dry.
Yes, but this particular year was an unusual year. We played several matches in the rain, and that's never had been anything we did. Maybe once a season we'd have one game in the rain, but in this case we had several games, and we adjusted to the kinds of tactics that you use. You play it differently in wet weather because the ball skips, it gets in puddles, and so we do a lot of short passing and quick passing, and you know that if he gives you a lead pass, it's going to go a lot longer than normal, and it's just all part of knowing your own team members and what they know and what they will do, and our guys adapted so well to that. As I said, that New York Times reporter says, I didn't think there'd be a way for them to play, but it was it was one of the finest soccer matches I've ever seen.
What was the highlight of that game?
Well, the highlight, I guess you'd have to say, was we won the game.
What was the score? Do you remember?
Right, it was 2-0 against the defending champions, Quincy College from Illinois. And then the final match was played against another defending champion from a year before, Davis and Elkins from West Virginia. They had a lot of foreign players, excellent players. They dominated the whole East Coast in their schedule, but they were good players, solid players, and a good coach. I'm sure they felt they had it made when they were to play Westmont because they knew of Westmont and knew that we rarely played in this wet weather. Plus, our team had been to the Nationals many years in a row and we never won it. We came close sometimes, but we lost early on to some very good teams. But we had all this experience. Every year we were able to win not only our district but the regionals to qualify to go to the Nationals, 11 years in a row. And so Westmont was a known quantity, and they knew that we were weak in certain areas. We didn't have quite the quality that some of these others had. And so I know that Davis and Elkins figured, we got this one made. Well, they didn't have it made. Our guys played brilliantly and won 2-0 against this.
2-0.
2-0.
I remember that team.
No, I'm sorry, George, that was the semifinal with Quincy. 2-1.
2-1.
And it was
That's
an overtime match. We went into overtime and we won it in sudden death overtime. And it was a great moment because it was Westmont College's first national title ever. And our guys played their hearts out. And I just can't say enough for the dedication they had, the work they put in early before we ever got to the Nationals. They didn't cut anyone, they cut themselves. So, George, we had a fairly large roster to start with. But before we had a few weeks in, I found that a number of players seemed to have a lot more homework and other responsibilities that they dropped off.
How did you get so many great players at Westmont? Did you offer big scholarships or something?
I wish I had scholarships. I didn't have any to begin with, and then we were able to get one or two. And as much as possible, we would find players like missionary kids who had needs, and they could qualify for a regular need scholarship. I only had one scholarship. And later, when I was leaving the college, they ended up giving me the same number as basketball, who had 10 scholarships. I didn't have any until my last year, and only one or two then. And then they upped it to try to encourage me to keep on recruiting and doing that. I had no trouble recruiting players. They wanted to come to Westmont. It's a beautiful campus. We played top-notch soccer. Little Westmont had a schedule with major colleges. We played UCLA, USC, University of Southern California, Cal State Fullerton, San Diego State, Stanford. Went up and played Oregon and Washington. Played Air Force Academy on a home field. BYU, University of Wisconsin. I got that far out to BYU, and I went on to Wisconsin because I knew the coach there. And so those are the teams we played, plus our NAIA schedule, which would be Biola and some other fine teams. There's some very good teams in NAIA. And so I loaded my schedule because I had this philosophy: you play the best to become the best.
Yeah.
And so,
and you did.
a fantastic game.